Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of jbassers Exposed Vet Productions on this crazy October 9th, 2025. Today I have my co-host, Mr. Ray Cobb. How you doing, Ray?
Doing great. How are you doing tonight, John?
I've been kind of a busy day, but I'm doing really well right now. It's been a pretty day outside, a little bit chilly up here, but I'll take it. Over 100 degrees, the hot, so the heat. And Today we've got Mr. Cobb, and we're going to discuss a few things. I want to start off basically with let's do some asbestos information and exposure stuff because we are exposed vet, and we do like to just we like to say stick a lot to our exposure issues because you're exposed to a whole lot of stuff in the military. Regardless of when you were in, what time you were in, what area you were in, you were still exposed to certain things. Um, I think the older the veterans get, the worse exposure has on them because, for example, nothing's worse than Agent Orange. Um, it's wiped out a whole bunch of people, and nothing's worse than asbestos either. It's killed a bunch too. So we'll start off with asbestos today. You don't have to be just a Navy vet to have asbestos issue or exposure. You can be Air Force vet, Army vet, any veteran, I mean, if you worked in a motor pool and you changed brakes, you probably had some asbestos exposure in your life. You know what I mean, Ray?
I
Mm.
do. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
you know the chances of you being exposed to asbestos is much greater than the
Hmm.
Agent Orange because if you
Hmm.
think back, I know when I was even in basic, they had some old buildings that we were in and out of all the time that had been built back during World War II,
Hmm.
and it's the beginning of the war. And then some of those pipes and things in there, they use asbestos as part of the insulation. And that
Hmm.
stuff is, all over the place. Um, I helped an Air Force person who got assigned, he got in a little bit of trouble, so they assigned him to a special detail, work
Hmm.
detail that was cleaning out some old pipes and some old barracks,
Hmm.
World War II barracks. And
Hmm.
he said that the dust as they took down those pipes and things when they took off the insulation, that it just looked like a fog in the room. Uh,
It does.
he won his case. He's 100%.
For
Took
asbestos
him
exposure?
didn't take him much longer than a year.
Now, what was his medical health issue with it? Was it have cancer or was it asbestosis or what?
He had COPD.
Okay.
He had problems with lungs and breathing. It hadn't turned into cancer yet, but they told him he had several spots. There's a test. You probably even know the name of it that they can do that can pick up if asbestos is still in your lungs. And it
Hmm.
shows up as little green dots, I understand. And he had that test and it showed several. And a few of them had kind of gotten close together. It wasn't just one or two dots. They were like 7 or 8 right there in one little area. And they told him to keep an eye on that could be an area that could develop into cancer.
I know usually if they found a spot in your lung and they, suspect anything asbestos wise or cancer wise, um, the way the X-ray folks explained it to me was they would do a high resolution CAT scan, and it would focus pinpoint on the area they're looking at. And then what they would do there, they would go in and they'd see what they thought, and they would try to go and do a biopsy and see, and they pull it out. And then if they put it under a microscope, see, it'll show the asbestos in there because asbestos never goes away. It's indestructible. That's the reason it kills people, because it gets in your lungs and the body can't fight it off. It can build around it, but it's not going to fight it off because it's indestructible. You can't even burn the stuff. But if you Navy started using asbestos way back in the early, maybe even 1800s, I guess, when they first found asbestos in Africa. And they started using this is the greatest stuff ever was. It won't burn. We can do this and do that. And so they started making all kinds of foreign films and for it, put it on over steam pipes and things like that. Use it at boilers and keep things from burning your hands when it's hot and anything to do with heat and mediation. They used it in, and it was the greatest stuff. And but down the road, uh, the places that mine this stuff, they had asbestos mines underground, and these guys would mine it, rip it out, and send it over to have, to the processing places and have it formed or whatever. And all of a sudden, everybody started dying. Even their families died from bad lung cancers and things like that, bad diseases. And they didn't, I don't know if they put any uh, caution to it or not, because I mean, it's been going on for years and years and years. People, I mean, it wiped out whole villages and places like that because, I mean, even the people, even everybody in the factory's dead now that put it together. Every family's dead. The guy would go home, put it all over his clothes, and his kids would get up his lap, and they'd play around, and they'd get it too, and they'd die. And of course, it takes time, it takes a while for it to metastasize, but the heavier your exposure to asbestos, the shorter your lifespan, And so, for example, these guys are swallowing it every day. And if you come into a military exposure, though, say, for example, you're in military, you see a steam pipe that's got asbestos on it, as long as it's got the insulation on it and it's covered and it's painted and it's hard, you can knock on it. It's no big deal, you know. Um, Biggest issue is disturbing that insulation. If something hits it, nicks it, or scrapes it, or cuts it, especially those fibers inside there are they look like it's hard to say. It's like a dust powder, but it's more of a little gray, bigger. It depends on the type of asbestos. But once that stuff gets airborne, look out because that stuff will float and float and float. And once it gets in your lungs, you can handle a little bit, but get a certain amount in your lungs, and it could take, within 50 years, it could cause you to have mesothelioma or asbestosis or type of cancers. It can get in your throat. It can get inside your stomach, anywhere. People swallow it. And I've had a lot of friends had it, several friends die from it. So that's asbestos in a nutshell as far, I can go into what types and things like that, but and where they use it at. Uh, like I said, anything steam wise. Uh, that even works in the Army barracks. They had those little boilers, had the steams going into the Quonset huts.
Yeah.
They can those things are insulated. Um, I've heard those stories about guys in the burning compartments. The steam line will be over top of the rack, the bunk, and they like to look real good in the morning, so they get their clothes out, and they stick that coat hanger in that insulation to hang their clothes up. Every time they pull it out, they're exposing the whole daggone barracks. Excuse my French. But Navy, same way. Navy went into more detail because Navy ships are, um, well, back in the day, most of them were steam propelled, and they had engine rooms and boiler rooms, and they're very hot working environments. So they had decks in between them to the main decks down in the engine room. They'd even put it on the floor and tile over to keep the heat from coming up in the rest of the ship. They use their own steam pipes. They use it for several uses, insulation. Um, they didn't stop using it till maybe I want to say maybe late 70s, early 80s, and they stopped putting in ships, and still they still put some in. Um, Submarines the same
What do they
way. I think
use
the
now?
last class. Go ahead. Huh? Fiberglass.
What do they use now?
Fiberglass. Fiberglass is it. I think that's about what they do. Have to use fiberglass unless they got some kind of composite that I'm not aware of. But remember, they don't have the engine rooms like they had back in the day too. There's still steam lines, but most of the propulsion now are gas turbine engines. There might be some stuff around it. Um, Eventually they'll come back to that type of propulsion because I mean it's kind of like putting a chainsaw motor on a trying to get a chainsaw motor to run your truck down the road. You know what I mean? Two-cycle engine, but I'm thinking they still use it some aspects. I think they still use some brakes. Use ceramics too. There's a lot of ceramics they use, but all depends on the experience and how they build. Now, I think the first class of subs that was asbestos free is probably the 688 class, Los Angeles class. I don't think it had a lot of asbestos in it. Anything before then, yeah, it had asbestos in it. I can vouch for that personally. Um, I participated myself in over 250 asbestos rip outs in the U.S. Navy, and majority of them were on certain classes of submarines. And we'll supervise most of them, but still, that's a fun job.
What things do you have from that, or what medical problems do you have?
I don't really have an asbestos type issue. My issues are neurological as far as that. Um, I do have some COPD and things like that going on. But my issue is I make them check me every year, and and if you've ever worked in the asbestos field and removed asbestos, it is imperative that you get at least a good test done every year and stay ahead of the game. And mhm. But you asked the question a while ago about what they're using now. They're using fiberglass insulation. They're using, I guess it's aluminum-based polyurethane stuff now. There's no asbestos, which is okay, you know. Um, but the usage is a little bit different too, because I mean, you got steam piping and things like that. It's dangerous as far as that. I mean, especially in combat. Say if you're in combat on a Navy ship, you take a hit like a missile or a bomb hits you or whatever. There's an explosion inside the ship. It blows them steam lines all to pieces, and asbestos is everywhere. There's still people in New York City today that are being diagnosed with lung in asbestos conditions. One of the Fox News guys just he's got diagnosed with some stuff from 9/11, and he's got some issues going on. But uh, hmm, anyhow, but he got diagnosed from 9/11. I think it's Eric Sean. Hope he gets better and hope he gets his stuff straightened out. Then the asbestos we use in the Navy, shipbuilders use it. Um, mhm. The Navy has a list of jobs that is basically called a pies list. Then the VA come out with a list. It's your higher risk MOSs for the Navy, just for the Navy itself. Um, you got the Navy's got a rate called a bosun's mate. That's the guy that ties all the knots and does all the painting on the ship and stuff. You got a damage controlman, which is the guy that fights the fires and things like that. A hull maintenance technician, that's the guy that welds the pipes, removes the asbestos for whatever the installation. Electrician's mates, a lot of electric places have asbestos around it, so they have to go in and, be exposed. Fire control technician, I could see that. Um, a gunner's mate guns, yeah, you got to have some heavy duty guns on because the shells are hot, so I guess they make them out of asbestos. Machine repairman, they do a lot of stuff too. Metalsmiths, pipe fitters, water tenders, and welders. Okay, well, in the Navy, the hull technician takes up the pipe fitter and the welder, and when I was in the DC, so that rate there, if you're a hull technician in the Navy, you might want to be checked, especially if you worked in any asbestos removing field. Okay. Hmm. What kind of diseases can I get from asbestos? The most common disease from asbestos is called asbestosis, which is the presence of asbestos inside your lungs. Uh, that's there with maybe a little inflammation and things like that in your lungs. And asbestosis is not going to kill you, but if you've got that, be careful because it will turn into something later on. The worst one is mesothelioma. That is a cancer, a deadly cancer that affects the lung, the lining and stuff of the lungs, and that's pretty much a fatal diagnosis. You can get other cancers related to it too. Ray was talking about that earlier, and the guy had COPD and some other stuff. You know, asbestos can have issues to do with that. Um, as far as other, you
Well,
know, hey Ray, how are you?
I'm doing good. I don't know where you went, but you were talking and everything, and all of a sudden you were gone.
I think I don't know. I wonder if the producer emailed you back home. I don't know. No, I don't know what happened. It
Well,
just
I
you just
went
cut
back to my
out. We ain't left
original
the show.
email and came back in.
Hmm. Okay. But I just going over the diseases, Ray, that asbestos causes. I went through mesothelioma. I went through asbestosis and some COPDs and things like that. Um, as far as the VA rating schedule for asbestos, the rating schedule for asbestos is under the interstitial lung disease issue. Used to be in the older regulations. You have to prove exposure to asbestos, and it's hard to prove. Um, it depends on your severity, your lung function, and things like that. As far as you know, how high the rating goes. Just look at the Title 38 Part 4, look at your condition versus what it is, and you can kind of get a handle on what but you got to know what your tests say and everything else, and you can ask your doctor or whatever, or your staff that you go see to, what's my condition look like and how severe is it. Um, if you had a biopsy done, that's one of the major diagnostic tools they want to use. So if you have mesothelioma and do a biopsy and they see the cancer, of course they can probably tell the cancer on the one of the films because each cancer basically is like you got your own signature, and that's what it is. It's kind of that way. But once the biopsy is confirmed, um, then if you got it, you're exposed. Yeah, now you got to prove exposure from the military. That's something that the VA will definitely rack you up against. But I mean, I've seen a few claims. Ray just mentioned one earlier. The guy won his claim. I'm pretty happy that happened. How many asbestos claims have you ever seen, Ray?
Um, Probably no more than 5 or 6.
Hmm.
Most of
We
them
had a
were
guy
Air
down there.
Force.
Yeah. Hmm.
I had one Navy.
That the guy that was
And
at
matter of
the.
fact, he was like you. He was on a submarine.
Hmm. Yeah. So that's the guy that was at the conference, wasn't it?
Yes.
Okay, I remember talking to him. He's good people. Good people. Uh, I'm gonna give you some secrets, guys. I'm not gonna give up my. I'm gonna give you up everything I got, but I'll give you some secrets to proven exposure to asbestos. Um, look your rating up on the list I got out. It's called the VA PIES list. It's under the title. It's under the VA.gov website. You can look it up and see it. Look up your occupation. Same thing for the Air Force. They've got the Army or whatever, and what kind of exposure you would have as far as the job series and title or your MOS they call it rating. Navy calls it rating, Army calls it MOS. I don't know what the Air Force and the Marine. Well, the Marines call it. Well, what you're a Marine, you're just a Marine, right? I don't think you got an MOS. I think it's hard charge and hard. But
There you go.
look it up and see what your rating is and kind of look at your job. Now, any enlisted folks who are in over this time, um, and you've got your hands on all your records, especially military records, I would be going through those records or having digitized. And first thing I'd be looking at is my enlisted performance evaluations. If you had a certain job in the military and it was your main duty, your main job, you will get an enlisted performance evaluation every year. It'll tell you whether or not you're a good sailor, a good soldier, or whatever, you know. They recommend you for retention in the military service. You flip that thing over to the back, and all of a sudden, things open up. Look up. Well, so and so did this and this. Here's the guy's job. It's so and so. He ripped out this, did this, did that, did this. You know, that's why you have a lead petty officer or a platoon leader or something like that, because they're the ones that do the initiation of these things. They write it in, turn it into the higher up the chain. You know, it tells you what you did in the military. I mean, it may not go into exact explicit detail. But mine actually did, and my biggest issue, even though I removed asbestos, and even though my medical records are stamped asbestos from the military, the VA still denied I had any issue or exposure to asbestos. Can you believe that, Mr. Cobb?
Just like I didn't have any exposure to Agent Orange.
Yes, we didn't use asbestos in the military. Yeah, that's a wonder they got
They
nose.
didn't
I wonder if
use
they can get
they
the
didn't
bill.
use Agent Orange in the United States.
Mhm. No, they didn't. No, they didn't. They'll probably still tell you that today, but we know
They
better,
will.
don't we? Mm-hmm.
Well, we know better. We've
Mm-hmm.
proven better, and everybody is. What I try to emphasize to the veterans, and you probably do too, in your asbestos, is about the same.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you happen to be in country or have a particular MOS that causes you to have to use it or be around it every day, they're going to not recognize that you were even around it or that they even used it.
Yeah.
Now we know that they had to use it. We know they had to test it. We know they had to develop it. I don't know if you
Mm-hmm.
remember, but a couple of years ago when we had that conference down here, you remember
Mm-hmm.
James Cripps stood up and made the statement. He says, "You know, a lot of times I hear people wanting to know who developed Agent Orange and made it so deadly." And he said, "You're looking at the SOB." And what they did, they went to him. He was a game warden, and they told him they wanted him to come up with a combination
Mm-hmm.
of the mixture of diesel fuel and dioxin that would clear the trees in 3 days. Not the 21 days, not the 10 days, but the 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's why it's so deadly and such a poisonous chemical to anyone that has been around it that uses that 70-30 ratio or the
Yeah.
50-50 ratio that
Mm-hmm.
James developed. And when I say
Well,
that's
so the
that
diesel.
70% dioxin to 30% diesel fuel.
Mhm. So the diesel fuel itself was kind of like an agent to make it start sticking to stuff when it sprayed on it. Is that what it was?
Yeah,
Kind of like
yeah,
a catalyst.
that's exactly
Okay.
what it
Mhm.
did. It
Okay.
kept the dioxin from just rolling off and falling on the ground. It made it
Yeah.
stick to the trees, stick to the bushes,
Mm-hmm.
stick on the leaves. And of course, anyone that's had um, seventh grade biology understands how the plants get their food and energy and water and everything through the leaves. So it was their way of when the leaves are gone, and then the tree dies, and now you got barren land.
That's kind of crazy because they could have used Dawn dish detergent for that. It does the same thing. You know, if you make something up for your grass with vinegar, put a little Dawn in it, and it'll get on there. You know, that's overkill. And they overkilled everything.
Well,
It don't matter. I mean, Vietnam's paying us back anyways because most of the furniture's coming back from there now, anyways, in the U.S. So we're getting the wood back. Just kidding.
yeah, that's right.
Oh no. But and we get back on this. Uh, on your back page, it's got a list of what you did. Fortunately, mine looked up, and I looked at mine, and I read it over, and it showed the exact number of asbestos rip-outs that I did in service and how it's exposed. All 4 years, every one of them had the same thing, and so it's well over 1,000, and so we did a lot of them. Biggest problem is though, in 1985, I was the only asbestos worker, certified asbestos worker, certified radiation worker on the West Coast. And so anything had to be done in certain areas of submarines, I was the one who had to do it. We did a lot of yard work with the bird, with the shipyards, but I had to kind of run what do you call it, project management with that, and go dip in and out and do things like that. And that was going on for a very long time. So if you got asbestos claim, good luck. The back page of that evaluation, the performance evaluation, is what actually turned around and got my asbestos exposure. Can see, they can see that I had it. So if I have any issues, it's going to be connected. But Lord and behold, if I'm already 100% for lung disease, so then I don't think we need to worry about it. But just in case. Lost a lot of friends due to asbestos. We lost, we've lost 4 so far from our group. Some cancers that's died. Asbestos took work, right there alongside of us. And they're pretty good people, man. They live a pretty good life. But it'll get you within 40 to 50 years after you get out. It can go any time, depending on your exposure, how heavy you were exposed. So if you're exposed pretty heavy, it might get you in 10 years or 5 years. A little bit less, things like that, but it didn't matter. But I was exposed heavily, but we did take precautions and we did wear masks and things like that. We had a 3M8710 desk mask back in the day when we did sampling. Uh, some say that was not a very good mask at the time. It was the best they had back then, and but it's hard to really can't tell it because sometimes them fibers you get through. So. But other than that, that's asbestos in a nutshell. We can go down and break up and tell you what types and kinds and where they were used at and things like that. But if you guys in the Navy on those ships that were built anywhere before 1980, 81, 82, you probably were exposed to some asbestos. That takes 10 to 40 years. And it can take up to 60 years to develop final symptoms of asbestos. Actually, they keep changing it every day. So, but that's it in a nutshell. Now let's get on one of my favorite subjects. We're, got halfway going. Ray, have you ever helped any veterans get service connected for heart disease?
Beside myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
You helped
ischemic
yourself?
heart disease is pretty common with two things. Number one, with diabetes, and number
Mm-hmm.
two, Agent Orange exposure, and they're connected.
Mm-hmm.
You got to
And
connect the
hypertension.
dots in some ways, and
Mm-hmm.
hypertension, but they're just
Mm-hmm.
now starting to recognize hypertension. Back when I was
Mm-hmm.
dealing with it, and I have a hypertension rating, but it says 0 out to the
Yeah,
side. So they recognized I had it, military connected, but they gave me a 0 rating,
0%. Yeah.
um, 0%. And that went
Mm-hmm.
on and has, I guess, a lot of times still going on today.
Mm-hmm.
The common thing, they make the statement, well, everybody has hypertension. Everybody gets it at some point in time. Maybe, but
Really?
if you look at the combination of things that causes it, everybody
Mm-hmm.
doesn't get diabetes and ischemic heart disease and hypertension, you know, and everybody that's overweight doesn't necessarily get hypertension. And also,
Or diabetes.
just because a guy may be skinny, he still could get hypertension if he's been exposed to stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
it's an ongoing battle. You as an individual, if you don't have an assumption, somebody says, "Well, you can't win a claim unless it's an assumption." Yes, you can, and James Cripps and I are ones that can prove that. But
Mm-hmm.
you've got to build your case based on your direct exposure or your direct contact and not on assuming because I was at Fort McCallum, Alabama Chemical Training Center that I was exposed to Agent Orange.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they helped develop it there. They tested it there. They trained officers on how to use it and the different ways to use it. So to say that it was not there is just really a joke on the Army's part, but they don't laugh about it, and except when they walk away, giggle, say, "Well, there's another one. We pulled it over." But
Mm-hmm.
it's whenever you're getting into these types of, whether it be asbestos, Agent Orange, or some other form of a chemical burn pits, you need to first look. Don't take it as an assumption. Take it and build your case as direct exposure. If it happens to be an assumption, that's great. But if you build it as direct exposure and prove that case, it's hard for them to deny it then because if they have an assumption and a direct exposure, that's a double whammy and they can't hardly reject that. So I tell
Mm-hmm.
all my guys, you sit down and do your research, and I tell them I refer them to James's webpage, VA the Redneck Way, and follow that step by step. And if they do, they're going to have a direct exposure situation. And if it matches up, wonderful, you'll win your case. For a lot of
Mm-hmm.
guys that, one of our friends who's not with us tonight, Barry Fraley, he used that
Mm-hmm.
very step by step and won it the first time through. Didn't take him hardly
Mm-hmm.
long at all, but he did exactly the way it's laid out in James's webpage. And I don't know of any easier way that I've ever seen it done. Now, are you going to have to appeal it? Yeah, if you don't win it. But if you've got all that information built into it at the beginning, they may deny you, but it's a false denial. So
Mm-hmm.
you'll be able to turn that around with either a supplemental claim
Appeal.
or carrying it
Mm-hmm.
to the BAV.
Another board, you sure can. Guys, you mentioned James Cripps. Um, James Cripps uh, is a uh, kind of advocate for vets, been doing it for a very long time. Uh, he was exposed because he was a game warden in the Army, and he sprayed the ponds and he worked around, to keep the weedy stuff down, I guess, so the troops could fish in. Was that Fort Jackson, or where was that at?
Fort Gordon, Georgia.
Fort Gordon, Georgia. Okay. He's also a deputy sheriff, so he can chase them off the base and pull them over and arrest them, just in case. But his stories are interesting. You can go to VA the Redneck Way. James also runs a kind of like a organization. It's what is it? U.S. United
United
States
States
Veterans
Veterans
Alliance.
Alliance, USVA.
Yeah. Okay, USVA. And you should read this stuff up in VA the Redneck Way. I mean, it's pretty hilarious. He's the first person, okay, to ever be service connected based on a direct exposure Agent Orange claim while stationed here in the U.S. Okay,
That's
that's the
correct.
first one. I mean, that's a lot. And folks, number two is Mr. Ray Cobb here. And James had a lot to help him out with too. And luckily they had one person put them both together, and they came out and did it. I mean, he was exposed to it at Fort McClellan. So, but let's talk about Agent Orange. A lot of issues, they got heart disease and things like that involved with it now. Ischemic heart disease is, well, it's ischemia. And what that means is you have to have atherosclerotic vessels around your heart and things like that. That's where the blood vessel goes into your heart. Any ischemia is basically ischemic, is what they call it. And give you a little heads up, actually my best friend in the world. I met him back in the 1990s. He worked with the VA, and he's since retired. We did a lot of fishing together. We fished a lot of tournaments together and things like that. He's several years older than I was. But I went down to the pier one day and we had a big weight of fishing at a weigh-in at Lake Cumberland, and so I was strapping the boat up, and he was taking the fish back down the ramp. It's just a small ramp to put them back in the water. So I got the boat tied down. I'm like, "Where are you at, Wesley?" I got looking and see him, so I hopped in the truck and drove down to the ramp, and he was down there, and he was kind of humped over. I said, "Man, you all right?" He said, "I couldn't breathe." So I said, "That ain't right, man. Let's get you home." So the wife got him over to the doctor, and sure enough, his aorta was the size of a pencil. So they had to go in and work on him and get him fixed up because he had aortic stenosis. But during that CAT scan, they found ischemic heart disease. And this guy was in country Vietnam because he elaborated on the daisy cutters that have to dig in for them bombs dropping. He did a lot of foot patrols, things like that. So we saw that, and I explained to him, asked him to read the heart cath, and they read it. And I said, "Wes, when you going in?" He told me. I said, "Why don't you get with me, and I'll get you on the computer, and I'll show you how to do this, and you can do it." And he did it. He filed his claim, and within 6 weeks he was service connected for ischemic heart disease and his ears, because it's pretty crazy. But hypertension is a disease. Coronary artery disease, another ischemic. Uh, heart, actually, hypertension is not really considered a heart disease. It's more of a vascular disease because of the way it got it. Of course, cardiovascular, and it's the part that, for blood to your heart. Your heart beats, it's a pump, okay? And it's a organic pump, of course. They pump, it sends blood through your arteries to your vital organs or whatever. The veins collect the blood and send it back to the heart. It's all a moving system, you know. So people know that. So. Uh, Ray, you ever heard of any arrhythmias?
No, I haven't. And I haven't really had anyone that's done a claim on one. I've heard about it, but as
Hmm.
far as I know, I have not. Usually there's other complications that probably go along with that.
Hmm.
Um, Now I know that, for example, there's a condition called AFib.
Right.
I'm not for sure if that is
That
somehow
is.
connected to any chemical exposure or anything or not.
Don't know. Um, Atrial fibrillation, guys, is um, when you got four chambers of your heart, and your heart's time. It's like a timing device, right? It's a beat, pump like that. Um, when your heart malfunctions, I guess to say, and it beats wrong, it allows blood to pull into your heart. That's atrial fibrillation. And if it pulls long enough, you start shooting clots out. Next thing you know, it's a big stroke causer. Matter of fact, it's probably killed more people than anything else. That's probably the main cause of the strokes. And so if you've got atrial fibrillation, you better be taking some blood thinners. And, you know, you got to be taking blood thinners. That's an arrhythmia. You got, there's some arrhythmias that are deadly. There's some that are not deadly, but there's some, that can cause you problems. It all depends on, what the arrhythmias are. Usually the lower chambers, VT is pretty bad, ventricular tachycardia. The sinus stuff ain't too bad, but anything ventricular might be an issue. So if you got those, it's pretty dangerous. Some people have more than one arrhythmia. If you got autonomic dysfunctions, your small nerves and things like that, or your automatic nerves are messed up, sympathetic nervous system or whatever it is, um, you could have two or three different arrhythmias. Depends on, which function, and that can cause you big problems too. Um, you know, procedures for the arrhythmias, they can do ablations on you and things like that, or give you certain beta blockers to help control, what it is. I've had them for a long time. I've taken every beta blocker known to mankind. I've had ablations before. Um, but when it comes down to it is, if they can't keep them under control, and if it causes difference, say, for example, it's neurological versus mechanical in your heart, then they're going to do something different because they can't cure it. The only thing you can do is fight it. And that usually means either getting either a certain pacemaker or defibrillator or machine to doesn't stop it from happening, but in case it does stop your heart or mix you up like that, then it might bring you back to life. So it's kind of a last resort. Um, Ray, are you surf for your heart?
I'm sorry.
Are you surf for your heart?
I am. I have ischemic heart disease. I've
Mm-hmm.
had a double bypass,
Okay.
and I don't know how it relates today, but back then they used an ejection factor, and my
Your
ejection
injection
factor
fraction.
was around 40,
Okay.
which put me into
60.
60%.
60% category. Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
The VA used to
if
use
your
it.
ejection factor is 30 or below, that's 100%,
Right.
and that's referred
Right.
to as chronic heart failure.
Yes, it is. Congestive heart failure. Bad stuff. The VA used to use ejection fractions, which basically an ejection fraction is measured by either two tests, a cardiac echo or a cardiac catheterization, which is the heart cath. They measure it, try to, the injection fraction is your heart's ejection pumping ability. That's the strength of your heart, the actual measurement, okay? That's what they used to base it on. Now the VA doesn't really, I mean, they still use it to a certain extent as far as the severity scope, but now they're using metabolic equivalents for meds. Say, for example, you've got heart disease and lung disease. Say your lung disease is pretty severe, but your heart disease ain't as bad as your lung disease, and you have issues doing stuff. Then they test you and say, okay, you only use like 3 or 4 meds. 3 meds is the same as a 30% ejection fraction. You know what I'm saying, Ray? 4 meds is 40%,
Yeah,
5 meds is 50%. That's how they kind of play that game, okay? To me, I should have left it alone, but that's just the way it is. And but you don't want to be 100% for heart issue, because that's pretty bad. Um,
yeah, it is.
I'm serious. You don't want to be.
Um,
I mean, there's certain things you don't want to be 100% for, and heart basically one of them. Unless you got a defibrillator and things like that. Where you might mess up and have you shocked back to life again. Good buddy James Cripps has had that happen to him more than one time, many Ray.
yeah, yeah, that's what I was saying. I've known of one or two others um, that's been the case.
Hmm.
Um,
I used to watch them police shows on TV, live PD and things like that, and they had an ambulance and the cops trying to catch this guy. And him and his wife got into it, and he's running out of the house from her. He had one of the defibrillators, so he'd run 30 feet and he'd fall down. He'd get run again, he'd fall down again. I said, man, what's wrong with you? He said, the defibrillator keeps going off. It's kind of,
Knocking him good, huh?
yeah,
Knocking
it's
him to the
happened pretty
ground.
good. I like to laugh myself over that one. VA ratings for hypertension, or hypertension, heart disease, I'm sorry. Hmm. They base the rating based on the severity of the condition and the impact's ability to work or perform daily activities. They range from 0 to 100% and primarily determined by level of exertion measured in METs, metabolic equivalent of task. Level of exertion. So if you exert yourself a little bit and you get short of breath and you can't breathe, like that's pretty high. It should be 100%, you know.
I got a question when we were talking about this. Now, I know that
Hmm.
Agent Orange causes ischemic heart disease, and I
Hmm.
also have I haven't helped anyone, but I understand that some of the guys a few years ago over in Iraq and Afghanistan that were around the oil fields and the burn
Oil fires.
pits, that
Hmm.
that affects their heart. I know it does the lungs, but does it affect the heart or does the lungs affect the heart?
Um, you want the scenario? If you got damaged lungs from inhalation to toxins like smoke or anything like that, what happens is you've got a heart that's trying to pump blood into diseased lung. And eventually it's like a pump, it keeps having to work harder and harder and harder to get that blood through that lung. 'Cause that's the first place the
And
heart
it's
pumps
going to
blood to is
wear
your
out.
lungs, right? So one of the biggest issues is pulmonary hypertension doing that. And, that's something you look at. And, if you ever had a heart cath and you look at your lungs, if you're service connected for your lungs, and you look at that and see, because, if you've got pulmonary hypertension, that's 100% rating for your lungs. And, but it's got to be a certain level in order to do that. I think it's above 25. No, MMHG will have the use of the ratings or whatever. I've had it for over 25 years, been certified rated for it. 100% permanent total for one issue. And that's a fun. And it helps you out with the arrhythmias too, because it causes your heart, it does. I mean, you got all this crap going on. It causes your pulse to race a lot. Pulmonary hypertension is bad for you. My the co-host I had it real bad. He still got it. Unfortunately, can't come on the radio no more because of some issues with the stroke. But we try to talk as much as we can to him. But yeah, that's one of his main issues. I mean, this guy's been on oxygen for years, and how he still hears is even a miracle. But that's one thing that causes pulmonary hypertension as far as that. And it causes right-sided heart failure, cor pulmonale, they call it. Causes your right heart it can kill you. It's deadly. That's one way exposure to inhalation to lung disease can cause your heart to go bad, right? Mm.
Well, I have some guys that, to the best of my knowledge, they don't have any heart conditions yet, but they have some problems with their lungs and
Mm-hmm.
kind of another side effect to it. Their lungs are gave them some or giving them problems.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were around the oil fields when they were burning. And I'm wondering if that also then doesn't go into other, in other words, can we connect the dots to
Mm-hmm.
allergies
It's
that way
easy.
too?
Allergies. Depends on what they did that. Are they service connected proven exposure to
To the
the
burn pits, yes.
toxin burn pits? What type of lung disease they got?
I
Is it
think
interstitial? Is
one's
it restricted?
40% and the other 60%.
Okay. So would they have no heart issues at all? Or they got heart issues now?
No, they don't yet, but these guys are. I call them young because they're in their mid 40s.
Right.
Um, they're between 40 and 50, and I didn't have any heart problems till I was in my 60s from Agent Orange.
Hmm.
So, and then that comes the question: was it the diabetes, or is it the Agent Orange, or a combination of the two? How does it all? You got to look at guys and think about how it connects because we've talked here before building your cases, stacking your
Hmm.
60s, you know, getting to that R2 level, getting to needing aid and attendance, and then R1,
Hmm.
and then R2, and the caregiver one and caregiver two. And I was talking to a gentleman the other day, and I kind of floored him. I still don't think he believes me. And
But
well, I can't go any higher. I'm 100%. I said, your work's just started. He said, what do you
hmm.
mean? I said, well, there's 13 levels above 100%. He said, you make money on that? I said, sure you do. Every time you can go up to a different level or a different letter grade and things equal up higher, that gives you a little more income. And I said, if you look on the charts, and you go look at va.gov, you find that a guy that has R1
Mhm.
and level one, then I mean, R2 and level two, he's going to end up making more than $11,000 a month. Now, how did you
Mhm.
get from 4,000 to 11,000 if you can't stack them and if things don't continue to go wrong? But I do
Mhm.
understand that our county service officers, one's right here in Franklin County, I said, don't worry about it once you get them to 100%.
Right.
It
Uh,
doesn't mean they're not entitled to it. He tells them, don't worry about it.
uh,
In other words, don't
guys, what
fool
he's
with it.
saying, in a nutshell, if you have a condition that you think you need an increase in, or if you need something else filed, and you are 100%, okay, uh, basically, the way I read it is if you got one single 100% disability, a single that's permanent total
I'm sorry,
disability,
what?
if you got one
Do I have
single
one?
100%, right,
Yeah,
and you can have two, it doesn't matter, okay, and you've got an issue, file the claim because you're going to have to knock you off a mountain to reduce you on that. Now, if you are piecemealed, which is 60, 40, 20, 20, you know how that is, right? You're still 100%. Um, you could look at it, see, because they look at all your disabilities when they do reviews, things like that. If you've had them for a certain amount of time, you're okay. If you had them 20 years, don't worry about it. They're protected by law. You know, there's even 10-year protections. They can't do this or that. So don't let them tell you not to do something or they'll reduce you. I mean, that's your decision, not theirs. Their decision is to discuss with you, advise you, and file your VA claim for you or help track your claim. That is their job. Telling you to file or not to file is not their job. That is your decision, your choice. You're the veteran. You agree with that, Ray?
absolutely, 100%. You know, what
If you got
folks
one,
also don't realize, if you have a condition, if your neuropathy from your diabetes is so bad
mm-hmm,
in your feet that you have no feeling, they can stick a pin in the bottom and you can't feel it. And then you may have a condition that develops called foot drop.
mm-hmm,
And if it's so severe, it's easy to tell. You can really tell if a person has foot drop or not. I'll talk about that next. But that's another
oh
L
God,
award. And an L award is a loss of use award. And an L award is a
mm-hmm,
100% award. That means you've
mm-hmm.
lost something that can no longer has functioning abilities. Now
It's the
I
same as
have two L awards.
it basically says that
You know, I have a left foot
couldn't be
and a
couldn't
right
be couldn't
foot.
be fixed by
I feel
stumps.
nothing.
Yeah,
Now the danger is that if I happen to step on a rusty nail, I could have gangrene set up before I even knew I had a problem.
yes, sir.
And
Now
yeah,
I had a issue the other night. Had a pair of shoes that give me a little bit of hard time. I didn't pay much attention. I didn't feel nothing. I mean, just but I got home. And I took my socks off and rubbed my hand down through there. I felt an awful. I found uh ugly looking spot on my just right next to my ankle. And but I tell you what, I've been fighting it hard to keep it getting infected. I didn't know it. You know, that's what diabetes does to you. If you can't feel it, you can't feel it. But one good thing about that, though, to tell you the truth, is you don't have to do the hokey pokey no more.
you don't have to take the wife dancing, right?
Right, can't do the hokey
Well, you
pokey
know
and forget
another
clogging.
thing that guys, you pay attention to what's going on. If you find yourself tripling and fumbling, you very
Hmm.
well could have what's known as foot drop. If you
Hmm.
look at your shoes and the toes are scuffed up from where you drug them trying to step up onto a curb, or you drug
Yeah.
them when you tripped and you you've heard those saying, oh, he'd fall over his own feet. Well, if
Yes.
that's happening, you probably could have foot drop.
Hmm.
So pay attention to what's going on and don't ignore it. Hopefully, and I know some do and some don't. I think you and I are fortunate enough we do. our
Yeah.
spouses pay very close attention to us. Uh,
Hmm. I bet.
and they pick up little things that you might be doing, and they'll say, "Well, okay." For a little this morning, for example, I didn't say anything about it. Pam says, "Do you feel all right?" Just out of the clear blue. I said, "Why do you ask?" She said, "Well, you just seem like you don't feel." I said, "Well, my blood sugar is over 400.
What
You
happened?
know, I woke up this morning and I don't know. Have no idea. Now it's
See now,
down tonight. It was 160 when we came on the show.
what happened? Man, I was getting lows and went to see my endocrinologist, which she's amazing. She redid my pump and everything like that. So she adjusted it so I was dropping certain times of the night, regardless of what I was. So she actually changed the settings on the machine to where at that during those hours itself, it delivers zero for like 4 hours. No, I could sleep through the night and wake up in the morning to be 100 and 105, which took out the lows, and which actually helped me a whole lot, um, change those settings on it. Now, they told me that I wear my Dexcom on my shoulder like you do on your arm, behind your arm. I put the
Yes.
pump about, I put the pump about an inch and a half away from it on the same arm, and that takes away any signal loss issues. So that's good, which is pretty cool. But I got to keep this foot situated where I won't be in trouble. But,
Well, I
that's
got a
good.
secure
But
message back from my uh, diabetics clinic today that
mhm,
you know, they took me off of 2 units of U500. I'm from, excuse
mhm,
me, of Victoza, and took me back to one. Well, the first thing that
mhm.
had to happen, I had to increase my insulin. Then I gained weight, and then my blood sugars went up a little higher than average, and my A1C went up. Well, we've been looking at it now for about 6 or 8 months. Well, I got the message today. They're putting me back on 2 shots or 2 units of Victoza on Monday morning. So I'm anticipating it slowly. My weight loss will come back. I'll be able to cut back on the insulin. And I've got to kind of
Victosa,
watch
what
it
is
to make sure that I cut back on the insulin when I need to so I don't do like you're saying and have those overnight lows and overnight crashes.
have you taken the, um, what's it called? Not Ozempic. You ever take Ozempic?
Yes, I take Ozempic every. That's what they're moving. I'm sorry, I said the wrong one. I'm going up to 2 units on Ozempic. I've been cut back to one, and now my numbers are
They
going
cut you
up.
back to
So
one.
I'm going back on 2 units.
Why they cut you back to one?
Well, everything was looking good, you know,
Do you have any,
and
do you see an endocrinologist at the VA?
yes, I do at
You talk to
Vanderbilt.
endocrinologist. I would talk to the Vanderbilt endocrinologist and tell her what's going on, how, what happened to you. They cut it back or whatever. And you having issues with Ozempic, tell them requesting to put you on Monjaro, take you up to like 5, 7.5, and you had your problems be solved. Your problems will be solved.
Okay.
That stuff will come off you. You'll feel better, and it'll fall off you and go. And it'll fall off you in droves.
Well, that's when
Mm.
I take 2 units of Ozempics. That's what happens. It's like it's just
Hmm.
melting down and dropping off.
Remember, you Ozempic
But
2 units is
at
still
the
pretty
same
weak
time,
dose.
I think what we did, we cut it back too quickly, and we wasn't paying,
Hmm.
or I didn't understand it. She wasn't paying enough attention. But anyway, when I was on it with two before, I started having like you those overnight crashes, overnight lows, where I was
Hmm.
getting down to 50, 40, stuff like that.
That's why I got this pump set up like that and you change like that. That way you can kind of control your own insulin. You just have to put your carbs in. But I would talk to your endocrinologist about Mounjaro. The VA can give you Mounjaro if an endocrinologist asks for it. But it's got to be an endocrinologist because your primary care doctor can't do it. They won't do it. Any diabetes
You
people can't
know,
do it. It has
they
to be, it has
I don't see a primary care with diabetes. I have an
okay.
endocrinologist,
I do too.
uh, Campbell. Campbell's the name, and
Okay.
he's good.
Mhm. They cut me back from uh, basically they cut me back to 5. I was taking 7.5, and I'd lost too much weight. Went into 164 pounds, which is too much. I want to be 180, so we backed off a little bit, and it's helping a little bit. But you lose it, man. I mean, it's like you can move better and things like that. But hey, Ray, hate to say this, man, but it's been fun. We're out of time. If you get a chance, give me a call later on. I'll give you some information. Um, and we'll discuss some other things about some other shows we're doing. But other than that, thanks for coming on, Ray. I appreciate you, bud.
Always enjoy it.
All righty. Save some crop in that lake for me now.
Well, there won't be long. They'll be hitting.
That's right. Well, guys, this is John on behalf of the Expose That jbassers Expose That Productions. We'll be shutting down for now. We'll see you next week, guys.
Good night.
Bye.